My name is Nicholas Kern. I'm the founder and CEO of Numbers for Nonprofits. We help nonprofits manage money with mission through accounting services, day-to-day accounting, helping with audit preps, annual budgeting, attending board meetings and the like. Right now, this time of year, a lot of our calendar year and clients are going through their annual audits. So if you were on a board or involved with an organization that's having a hard time getting through your audit, that might be an opportunity for us to connect with you and see if we can help. I'm pleased to introduce you Amanda White. Amanda White has her own capital campaign consulting company, and I've crossed paths with her on several accounts. Right now we have one common client, Madison Public Market Foundation, I'm aware of. And I know she has many more that she can detail or decide if she wants to mention them in introducing herself. I'll stop talking soon here and let her introduce herself. But one more thing would be, we're going to let Amanda get through her presentation, and then we're going to save questions for the end if we can. Is that right, Amanda?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, so we'll do that, and then the last thing would be we did offer a small gift card for Amazon at the end of this, and Tyler will draw that virtually for us and announce that name at the end. So without further ado, Amanda White, thank you.
All right, thank you. I am going to try to share my screen here, which is always an adventure. Can everybody see it? Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks, Nick and team, for having me here today. I was just sharing that it's been a while since I've done one of these presentations, and so it's just great to meet some new folks and to share a little bit of what I've learned, and especially maybe what I've learned over the last couple years in this like new fundraising world that we're living in. I've been a Madisonian for almost 20 years and a fundraising consultant for 9 years. And it's really, it sounds, I know, corny to say, but it really has been a gift to work with over 30 organizations, mostly here in Madison, and work with all the people in the nonprofit community. It's been amazing, and I've learned a lot working with so many great folks. So today I'm going to share with you a really basic overview of capital campaigns and just kind of take you through at a very high level the capital campaign process from start, what you kind of see along the way, and at the end. And I'll try to add just some of my own perspectives along with the foundational important pieces to know. I'm going to fly through these slides pretty quickly. And again, at just a really high level, because in doing these presentations, I've learned that people are at all different levels when they attend these. So some will be just starting the fundraising process for the first time, and some will maybe be halfway through a campaign and have some questions. So I'm going to get through the slides quickly so we have lots of time, like 20 to 30 minutes at the end for questions and discussion, so we can really get to the meat of what you hope to learn today. So just to get started, these are some of the organizations that I have had the opportunity to work with most recently. So the Center for Black Excellence and Culture is one of my main projects right now. We're about $20 million into a $36 million capital campaign. The Madison Youth Arts Center, Heartland Farm Sanctuary, Bayview, just amazing organizations that I've had the great luck to work with. One thing that I always want to start out with, and I think it's great for people who are new to fundraising to understand, but also it's great to remind all of us too, that good fundraising is never about the money. It's not about the ask. It's really about relationship building and you connecting with people who have a shared passion for your cause and your mission, and then engaging them in your important work. So fundraising is really about connecting and engaging. The ask is the smallest piece. And as I think we all know, the tried and true method of traditional fundraising is the fundraising pyramid. And you know what? It's still working. It might look a little different sometimes, but it still is the tried and true method. And what this means is at the top of this pyramid, where your major givers, your lead givers, and your plan givers live, about 80 to 90% of all the gifts come from this small 10 to 20% of donors. But we don't want to forget that the base of the pyramid is still very important, even though it takes a lot of $100, $500, $1,000 donors to get to the millions that you need to typically raise in a capital campaign. This base of fundraising is important because it's often where we find our major givers. They give to the organization once through an annual campaign, they give through the big share, they maybe come to an event. If we're tracking them well and we're understanding who our base of supporters are, there are many people in your base who could give more if you knew who they were and you simply asked, that they have capacity. So that's often where we find our major givers. And just a reminder of the fund development process, that we're identifying those potential prospects either from our base or from people on our capital campaign committee who are helping us make new friends and introduce our organization to others. We're then engaging them in our organization, in our activities, so that they feel an emotional connection to your organization and your cause. Then we make the ask, and then we spend a lot of time thanking them. And then we come back to engaging them again, asking, thanking, engaging, asking, thanking. That's the process. And it's important to know that the least amount of time that we're spending in this whole process is actually asking for money. And often that's almost every time I have a new client contact me, they're most focused on the 10% ask part, because that's the part that feels maybe foreign and scary. But really what we want to be focused on is the engagement and the thanking, because if we do those well, the ask is easy. And then just to remind all of us, especially in major gift fundraising, which is what we need for capital campaigns, fundraising takes time. Again, one of the other things that I almost always hear from new clients is that, they want to raise $5 million in like 9 to 12 months, that we got to breeze through this thing and get it done. I have yet to have a client come to me who wants to raise money in a year or less and actually raise all their money in a year or less. It happens, but it's rare because it takes time to engage people. And when you don't take the time to engage people, you almost always leave money on the table. They're not going to give as much if they don't feel that level of engagement. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, what is a capital campaign? I think we all know that it's a very highly intensive, focused time where we are reaching out and we're fundraising. We're focused on a specific revenue goal for a very specific purpose during a specific time frame. And we break down the campaign into multiple phases, right? So the preparation phase is where we're doing some feasibility. And whether you pay a consultant like myself to do a full feasibility study, which is really like marketing research for capital campaign, or whether you do it on your own, it's important to do it. And what it basically entails is talking to current donors, potential donors, and stakeholders about your organization, about the project, and hearing what they feel about your organization. Is the project something they're excited about? What about the project excites them most? These are things that you can either learn through working with a consultant, or you can learn through just yourself meeting with your donors and getting a sense of what excites people and motivates people about your project. Then you create a plan and you prepare the materials. Often this preparation phase takes anywhere from 4 to 8 months depending on kind of where you're starting and the size of your campaign. And then we move into the quiet phase, which I actually don't like calling it the quiet phase. I'd rather call it the large gift phase, because you don't want to be, while you're quiet about your project, you don't want to be quiet about your organization. You want to be promoting your organization. You want to be talking everywhere about the good work that you do, so that when you're having these direct conversations with potential donors, they're like, it's like sparking their memory of something they just heard, something amazing they just heard about your organization. And we're going to talk more about the quiet phase a little later. And then once you've raised 50 to 75% of your campaign goal, then you're going public with your project. You've already been talking about your organization and the amazing work you do, but now you're going to go public with your project. And the reason we wait, which is almost always very hard for people to wait till they've got 50%. The reason we wait is because when you go public, you want to go showing great momentum, great donors behind your project, so that people have no hesitation signing up and donating to your project. And there's always a fourth phase that I like to talk about, which is the transition phase. So yes, a huge benefit of doing a capital campaign is at the end, you have something amazing, a new building, an endowment, a new program, whatever it is. But you've also had this hyper-focused time of fundraising and outreach, and you've gotten all these new donors, and now you want to keep them. You want to transition them to become annual donors of your organization. So not only do you have this amazing new asset, but you also have amazing new people who are excited and love what you're doing and will often want to stay engaged. And your annual giving can go up quite dramatically from that capital campaign. Some quick things to know: average Madison size campaigns, I would say $4 to $10 million. There are certainly several that are less and several that are more. Average duration, again, depending on where you're starting and how large your campaign is, 18 to 36 months, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. This is, I think, always shocking to people, and it's still sometimes shocking when I hear about it. I was just talking with Tom Linfield over at the Madison Community Foundation, and he tracks all the different campaigns very closely. There's at least 35 going on right now that are either being planned, are in the middle of their campaign, or just finishing up their campaign. That is a lot of asks out there, and that's not even counting all the annual giving asks from the 3,000. I see Nick shaking his head. You know, Nick, from like the 3,000 different nonprofits in the region. So donor fatigue is real, but it is not a deal breaker. But because our donors are getting asked so often, they're savvy, and it's really, really important that you do your homework before starting these campaigns, because you have a lot of competition. So now I'm just going to take you through a few thoughts on how to get started. Don't start before you're ready. That's another thing when people are new and they call me. So often I have to say to people, I'm so glad you called so that I can share with you, you're not ready. You're not ready to start. And you're not ready because your project might not be ready. Do you have a solid project plan? Do you have a solid project team together that donors can feel confidence in that this project is going to move forward? Do you have a project budget? Because donors will ask to see your project budget. And most importantly, do you have an operating plan and like 3 to 5 year pro forma operating budget, basically? So people can, because donors will want to see from groundbreaking till 5 years in, that this is a sustainable project that you can do, right? And obviously you need to know these things because you need to know how much money do I need to raise. And that should all be based on your project plan and your operating plan. And then you need to bring together a strong leadership team. You need to have a campaign plan. And then you need to put together some amazing campaign materials. Now, if you're interested in a consultant, I can just say that when I tell people they're not ready, it's because they're not really ready in the project plan, business plan phase. I or other consultants can help through getting the campaign goal, the leadership team, all of that. But it's really important that you've got your project baked first. Your leadership team, there's a typo, your leadership team will make or break your campaign. And also how engaged and excited your leadership team will make or break your campaign. So you don't want a board or a campaign committee that looks like this one, where people are just not very engaged. They're not overly excited about what's happening. We need ambassadors for your organization, and we need the board to be the most important ambassadors and to lead the capital campaign. It's so important. And that doesn't mean that your board has to be out making asks. It means that they have to be connecting you with people in the community who might care and be interested in what you're doing. And we need them fired up and excited about your important, amazing work. And then in addition to the board, you want to pull together a capital campaign leadership committee, mostly of people from outside your organization so that you can make new connections. You want people who, yes, are connected in the community, maybe have some name recognition in the community, but most importantly, you want people who are excited and engaged about what you're doing. Don't pull people to the table kicking and screaming or not that interested, because even if they're the most connected people in the world, if they're not interested and fired up about what you're doing, it's not going to be very helpful. This is just a list of some of the pieces that you need to be planning for as you're thinking about your capital campaign. You need a case statement or an engaging piece. And I can just share, like, this is an example. Well, I can't share this because my camera's not on, but an example of a case statement. You can see it in several websites, and I might include an attachment in the email follow-up that I send to this. You want a video. Video is so important because the main thing that we're trying to do through our outreach materials is creating an emotional connection. And the best way to do that is through video. I have absolutely witnessed firsthand myself going into a meeting with a donor. I have either shared the video in advance or I share the video in the meeting, and the conversation just turns so quickly. So they're interested. I show the video and they're like, wow, blown away, excited. It can change a conversation. So that strong campaign video is really important. And then thinking through naming opportunities, having an email template for your volunteers, for your capital campaign volunteers to use, talking points so that we're all talking not exactly the same, but we understand all the main points and we're talking about those the same. Presentation slides, a pledge form if you're going to be accepting pledges, online donation portal website. Do you have it? You've got to have it. And then a process for managing those donations. Always, always, always add capacity. You cannot start a capital campaign for millions of dollars with the capacity that you currently have. You have to add capacity because the capital campaign will take more time and energy than you even think it's going to take. And so even if you have an amazing development director, if they don't have an assistant, get them a part-time assistant. If they have a part-time assistant, make them full-time. If you're an executive director and you don't have a development staff, hire a part-time campaign director. You've got to have someone who is focused on the administration and is making sure that all the administration behind the scenes is happening and keeping everybody on the same page. Really important. Okay, so you've done all this work, you're ready to get started. And what I often see is we've done all this work preparing. We've gotten this amazing team of people together. We sit down at our first couple capital campaign committee meetings. We go through the project with our volunteers. We share all the information. We say, here's the strategy. And then everybody kind of looks at each other and is like, great, we're ready. Now wait, what do we do? What happens now? And don't be discouraged if you do all this work getting ready and then you kind of sit down and it's kind of slow moving trying to get it together, because it takes time for your capital campaign committee to really kind of adhere as a team. And often with our capital campaign volunteers, it might be some of the first times they're doing this kind of formal capital campaign process. And people need time to just start having some conversations, get a feel for this, and get into the groove. And that includes your staff, your board, and your capital campaign committee. So it's easy actually to stall out in this stage before you even really get started. And so the main thing is that you just get some meetings scheduled and you start talking to people and keep talking to people. So don't be afraid to start and just start talking to people. Even if it's not perfect, you'll figure it out quickly. Okay, so we've started, we've launched, we're building some momentum. What to expect along the way? The first thing that I just talked about this a bit ago is the quiet phase. So often we have a tendency to want to spend all this time working on preparing the materials, getting some exciting donations going, and then feeling like, well, if we just got something in the paper, or if we just shared our campaign video on our social media, people would know about it and we'd really get more excitement. Well, the problem with that is when you go public with your project, you want to be in a position where you give people very little ability to be skeptical, because when they hear about it, you want them to be able to feel confident donating, and often donating in this phase is kind of a gut emotional reaction. You don't want them to second guess it. You want them to be excited about it, feel good about it, and send that $100 donation or that $500 donation. If you've only raised 10% of your dollars or 25% of your dollars, and you're an organization that might not be a group that a lot of people know about, they're going to be kind of skeptical, like, well, gosh, can they actually raise this 5 million? They've only gotten 10% raised. Are they actually going to be able to do it? I think I'll wait to see if they actually get more of this money raised. So that's why when we go public, we try to do at least 50%, if not more. Now, one thing about fundraising is it's a little different for every organization. So while this is the tried and true method that works, if you are a new organization with a brand new project, I'll use the public market as an example, although that has been like a political nightmare. So it's different for a lot of reasons, but I can use it as one example where that's a brand new project, a brand new nonprofit that was launched for that project. If we would have waited until we had 75% or even 50% of our money raised to talk about the public market, that would not have been a good thing, because we needed people to start coming to events, getting a sense of what the public market would be. So we talked about that project well before 50% was raised. So while this is the tried and true method, there are some circumstances where you might have to go more public early, but you really try not to. The other thing is, don't be quiet in your quiet phase. This is why I don't like calling it the quiet phase. Talk about your organization as much as you can. In some cases, we will try to run a PR campaign before or during the quiet phase, so that as people are considering gifts or your capital campaign volunteers are reaching out to people, they have a sense of what you're doing and they maybe feel good about something they just heard about you. Expect surprises and be ready to pivot. While the planning is so critical, there's always going to be unplanned things that happen that you're not expecting and that cause you to think, ooh, we're going to have to, what do we do now? We're going to have to change something. And you have to be flexible and nimble in capital campaigns. There's going to be sharp peaks, hopefully not valleys, but sharp peaks where you just feel like you've got this great momentum going. You've got donations coming in the door, right and left. And then all of a sudden, it's going to plateau. It almost always does, where you've been raising, and then all of a sudden it plateaus. And it's extremely common for capital campaigns, so don't be shocked by it. And basically, you just have to keep talking to people, keep finding prospects, keep having those meetings, keep having house parties that you're inviting people to, and eventually you'll get that momentum going again. So don't let the plateaus scare you, but just keep plowing through them. And then absolutely expect to hear no. People are going to tell you no, and they're going to most likely tell you no in a really kind, nice way, but you're going to hear no, and you're going to say, okay, that's all right. And depending on the no, some no's are maybe later, and some no's are a hard no. And so you just have to kind of understand which kind of no you've gotten. And then if it's a no, but maybe later, then you're gonna kind of think of a way, to set up a process to contact them later. And if it's a hard no, you're just gonna move on. But we're gonna hear no, and it's gonna be okay, and it's not gonna hurt our feelings, and we're just gonna keep going. Absolutely engage your new donors. Again, so once somebody has said, I'm gonna give you, $500,000 for this amazing project, and you're going to celebrate, and it's going to be really exciting. Maybe they're going to do it through a multi-year pledge. So you're going to send them a pledge form. You're going to get all those gift details worked out. They're going to make their first pledge. And then too often they don't hear from you again for a while, sometimes a long while. And that's not okay, because you want them to be donors for years to come. And so you want them to get engaged. You want them to continue to feel good about what you're doing. And also, especially those early donors, they might give at the end and help you finish off the campaign. And so you need them to stay connected through the course of the campaign. So engage those donors, whether it's inviting them to events, whether it's inviting them to volunteer in different ways, whether it's making sure that they are absolutely on your e-update list, whether it's sending special emails and communication to your donors with maybe a first announcement before you go to press with exciting news. You want to think of ways that are simple and not time consuming to engage them. And then thinking about finishing, one is you have a plan for the overall campaign. You need a plan for the public phase, or the small gift raise, as I like to call it. This is a different type of fundraising than major gift fundraising. This is on a more like mass level. So and the easiest way to do this is to understand where you're most likely to get these small gifts from. Who are your target audiences? And then think about, where do they go already? Where are they gathering already? Maybe we know that our target audience tends to be members of Downtown Rotary that go to Downtown Rotary. Our target audience tends to be faith-based, and they tend to go to these churches or temples or whatever it might be. Then see who you know that are part of those groups and get a presentation. So think through, maybe it's neighborhood, maybe your project is very geographically located, and so then think about your neighborhood associations in those areas. Go to your neighborhood associations. So you want to go where people gather. You want to think about your own social media and having a lot of social media attention and driving people to your donate page and driving people to your website. Be very strategic about this public phase, because it can be a time sink. And then find a match or two for this public phase. Again, this is something that sometimes is overdone, but it's tried and true. People get excited when they feel like their donation will be matched with a one-to-one gift. And then should you hold a big fundraising event to raise lots of money? No, just don't do it, especially in a post-COVID world. Oh boy, even before COVID, I would tell people, no, do not hold these, but you hear about these big fundraising events, Big Brothers Big Sisters does an amazing event where they raise like $300,000. Boys and Girls Club does a couple amazing events where they raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are not the norm. And if you don't have an ongoing gala or something that you've been doing for years that's at that level, the chances of you raising a six figures through a large event is very low. And even if you do, the amount of time that you have to put into that event is shocking. And when you think about the cost of your time and what you've raised, too often the balance is zero or negative. There are much more time-effective ways to raise money through a capital campaign than having a huge fundraising event for the capital campaign. All right, I will get off my soapbox now, but that's my big event soapbox. Don't do it. And then make sure to celebrate every milestone along the way, whether it's a big gift, whether it's a certain, dollar amount of the campaign that you've achieved. Make sure to celebrate because this is hard work and you can get burnt out, but it's celebrating that keeps us going. So make sure to do that. And then the last thing I want to say, and as a white woman, I am not going to tell you how to be equitable in your fundraising, but I can say in working with the Center for Black Excellence in Culture, in working with Urban Triage, in working with a few different organizations that really focus on community of color, and also just following the national conversation right now that's being had between donor-centric development, which has been the norm, and community-centric development. Equity and development is changing, and it needs to change. Unfortunately, fundraising often does have a power dynamic at play. And right now, that power dynamic and our fundraising world in general, especially in Madison, is very white. And we need to change the way that we are fundraising in Madison and beyond. We need to think about DEI within our projects to start. We need to think about how our leadership is comprised of our boards and our capital campaigns. And it's not just about having a certain percentage of people of color or women on our boards or our campaigns. It's about thinking how we can engage those communities in our project, not just one or two people. It's thinking about our naming opportunities. So often, our naming opportunities are targeted to the largest donors who all too often are white, which we love those donors and we want to have naming opportunities for them and we want them engaged, but there are ways that we can engage others as well in naming opportunities. And in our outreach, who we're reaching out to, who we're engaging. I will say, and again, this is because the project has really truly been led and brought up through the Black community, but the Center for Black Excellence and Culture, they went to the Black community first before they went to anyone else and asked them to give. And in 2 months, 300 Black donors gave gifts anywhere from $50 to $10,000 to launch the campaign. And that's pretty amazing to go to that community first and ask them to give. If you're interested at all in this equity and development conversation and you're not sure where to start, this is Vule, and he is, I'm sure a lot of you know him. He's like a rock star on the national nonprofit stage in terms of just making us laugh about the nonprofit challenges that we have. And most recently, he's been very, very focused on equity within nonprofit and fundraising. So checking out his website and blog is a great place to start. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
I'd like to kick off on Amanda. I've seen in my experience when capital campaigns happen, it tends to cannibalize the operating fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a way for or a suggestion for nonprofits to overcome that cannibalizing, or is it just something in that year of annual budgeting that you have to plan for and make accommodations?
Yeah, good question. Very good question. So we try really hard to keep the annual giving separate from the capital giving. It's not always easy. It doesn't always happen perfectly. But when we're going to our current donors, the difference is we're asking them for a one-time meaningful gift for this particular project. And we want to share too that we still need their annual giving support, that we're not stopping the operations of our organization. We're not stopping the support that people need in the community from our organization just because we're doing this campaign or this big project. So we really try to emphasize in the early meetings with the donor, as we're talking about the project and as we're talking about their gift, that we still need their annual gift and depend on it, but we are hoping they would engage in a one-time special meaningful gift for this particular project. And so talking about that, just getting that elephant out right away in those first conversations is really important.
This is Casey. Can I just jump in with a question?
Hi, Casey.
Hi, Amanda. Can you talk about how to budget for a capital campaign, such as you talked about adding capacity and, you know, all the materials and the meals that you're going to be paying for and all of that? How do you develop the campaign budget?
In terms of like, how do you pay for these things?
Yeah. Does it come out of your operating budget, or do you actually have to come up with a campaign budget that has expenses?
Yeah. That's a really good question, and I've seen it go so many different ways.
Okay.
So some organizations I've seen have a healthy reserve, and they use some of those reserve dollars to get started without jeopardizing, obviously, the sustainability of the organization. I've seen organizations, you know, talk very early to a couple of their very long time close donor friends about an early gift to help get this initiative off the ground. And the risk with that is those donors might also be your largest donors, and they might give more to a project once it's like developed and they can see the renderings and get excited. So in that case, we often try to talk about, can you help us get off the ground? And then we'll come back once the project is really baked and we'll want to talk to you more. So kind of setting up almost like a two-stage opportunity with some of those early donors. And then what are other ways that I've seen? I'd say those are the two big ways that I've seen groups raise the early capital that they need just to get maybe some architects on board and to get some of the materials developed. They also, I have seen some groups go through the Madison Community Foundation for capacity building grants. You know, Madison Community Foundation likes to give those as long as you have a solid plan and a clear path. And there are actually a couple other funders in town as well, foundations, who would consider some capacity building early kind of program development, project development dollars. Is that helpful, Casey?
It is. Yeah, I think, you know, part of it just ties back to what you were saying about the importance of having your business plan in place. You've got to have your plan before you start asking people to fund it. You have to know, how are you actually going to be able to do this as part of the feasibility study of your campaign, is you have to figure out how you're going to pay for it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and and kind of chopping it into chunks, and thinking about, okay, we need a business plan. We need to hire somebody to write that business plan. Like, we have this idea, we vetted it with our board and our stakeholders. We need a business plan to put this all together, and we really have to talk to an architect to make sure what we want to do makes sense. That all takes dollars, so figure out how much that's going to cost and just do that one little chunk, and then you can build out the rest of it, right? Without taking it all on at once.
Amanda, a tack-on question from me would be, so you talked about the front end. How about the back end? You've now got a new big building. It's beautiful. You've got hundreds of thousands of dollars now in new costs, utilities, new program, new personnel. Do you incorporate that first 2-3 years of new operating costs into a capital campaign? Or do you suggest that an organization just buckle down and say, hey, okay, you've got a new organization, zero-based budgeting in your year one of your new world, you better plan for an additional $200,000-300,000 of operating fundraising dollars?
I think a little of both. Well, no, a lot of the first thing and a little of the second thing. So one is I rarely will. I can't think of a time, especially recently, where I haven't said to a new client, okay, great, your project's going to cost $5 million. Let's budget another $1 million for operating reserves, program development. And we really want to think through, like I would say for a very new project, a first year of operation. How much is that going to be? Let's raise it in addition to what we need to raise for the actual building. First of all, donors want to see that. Again, donors are getting very savvy, and they want to see that you have a clear plan for operating because it's going to add expenses, and they want to know that you've recognized that this new project or building is going to add a lot of expense. And then they want to see that you have a plan for addressing that. And the best way to do that, and I think that you're raising all this money anyway, raise some extra, have an operating reserve, especially if your organization has never really had a robust operating reserve. This is an amazing opportunity to have that and establish that. And there's going to be things in year one and year two that you don't anticipate and expect. And boy, it'll be nice to have that cushion. Right, Nick? I'm sure you've seen like the worst of this situation.
Yeah. Amy, Ryan, just one question came up through chat first, and then we'll get to you. Alicia asked, if you don't do fundraising events, how do you engage your donors? Is community events a potential alternative?
Yes, great question. I love fundraisers. Okay, I love fundraisers and I love house parties. So it's not that I don't think you shouldn't be doing some fundraising related events. It's that the big, huge events, the galas, the bike rides, those sorts of things are the biggest time sink in terms of all that you could do. So when you're in your quiet phase, especially, I really like house parties because they're really easy to do. They don't take a lot of planning. The host will often pay for the food and the drink that's there. And it's a great we sometimes need those opportunities, which is maybe where this person is going. You need those opportunities to engage people. And you do a lot of one-on-one meetings, which take a lot of time, and it makes sense to do that with people who have a capacity to give. For those who could maybe give you 10,000 or 25,000 or 5,000, doing house parties and talking to a dozen people at a time instead of individual meetings makes more sense. And you can still have that great connection with people. And then it's an easy way for your capital campaign or your board members to ask people to engage and give. A lot of people will feel more comfortable with inviting them to their home to hear from the executive director than saying, hey, can we set up some time to talk about this organization, blah, blah. Bless you, Casey. And then the other piece of it is fundraisers. So I think there's, depending on your project and your organization, you may need to be reaching out and bringing people in. And sometimes the more like community events are a good way to do that. So again, for the public market, we had taste events where we had our our diverse market ready vendors all selling products and giving samples. And we told people to come out and get a taste of the public market. We literally had thousands of people come through in 3 hours. Our mailing list went from 400 people to 6,000 people. And it was really important to do that work before we hit our finale campaign so that we had a big list to then reach out to. So I guess that's a long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps answer that question.
I think it did. Amy, Ryan, your question?
Nick, so nice to see you. Amanda, pleasure to meet you. An excellent job on this program so far. I'm Amy Ryan from Holy Wisdom Monastery, and like probably many on this call, we are gearing up for a 2023 capital campaign. We are obviously in the early phases, and we're discerning whether or not to do a capital campaign or a comprehensive campaign. Could you comment on when to do one or the other, or what considerations that we should be thinking about now before we decide?
A capital campaign versus a comprehensive campaign? What do you mean by a comprehensive campaign?
So kind of like to Nick's question or comments earlier about incorporating in your annual giving, or maybe even considering in endowments, multiple goals into one campaign, not just a specific project for a capital campaign.
Got it. I think that is very dependent on a lot of different things and also the organization. So that's a hard question to answer off the cuff. But I would say partly it depends on how much money you need to raise for the main piece. So if you need a new building or an expansion or something, and you also know that you need and want an endowment to kind of go with that or to be coupled with that, it really depends on your capacity for how much you think you can raise, and then how much you're going to add to it. So, if a client said this to me, I would help them focus on what's the main thing that we absolutely have to have and how much is that going to cost. Okay, now we think we could actually raise a bit more than that. What else do we need and make sense to couple with this? I mean, an endowment and a capital project do make sense to go together if you have the capacity to raise those kind of dollars at one time.
Yeah, excellent.
There's also possible stages. Like one thing that I've had some groups do who know they need both, or know that they need an operating reserve, an endowment, and a capital project, they'll do it in stages. So they'll think about, okay, we're going to do the reserve and the project now, and then 3 years from now, we're going to build our capacity for fundraising in general. We're going to bring new people in, and then 3 years from now, we're going to do an endowment campaign once people are excited about all the work we've done and they can see the impact of the work that we've done. So I don't know how helpful that is, Amy, but I would say it really depends on a lot of factors.
That was extremely helpful. Thank you. I'm a newbie in this space, so any insight that I can garner is greatly appreciated.
Sure, no problem. Well, welcome to the space, to the fundraising.
Thank you.
I'd like to go off of that. I appreciate that insight, because I know in talking with Madison Community Foundation, they really encourage you to do that, to raise money for your endowment while you're doing that, which is great in that some people maybe they would give to an endowment that they wouldn't give up front because it felt like, oh, you're thinking about the future. And this is guaranteed if I put money in this endowment that it's going to go to the kind of work, even if your nonprofit goes by the wayside, that it's going to go to the kind of work that they care about. So I was really weighing that as well.
Yeah, and I think there have been many campaigns that couple an endowment with a capital project, and it makes a lot of sense. And the Community Foundation has a great program and some financial support for that. And so I've seen it work both ways, where groups have done both at the same time because they have the capacity and it really makes sense. And then I've seen folks do an operating, more of a board directed operating reserve plus a capital campaign. You want to at least do that and then think about growing into an endowment, right? So it really just depends on a whole lot of factors for your individual organization and what makes sense.
Amanda, could you just talk a little bit about ask amounts and how you sort of think about, is it like 5 times their annual gift, 10 times their annual gift? Like, is there a little magic strategy for what to ask as a one-time investment in a capital campaign?
My gosh, I wish there was a magical strategy that would make my job and your job a lot easier. I would say there's no tried and true formula. What's really important is the research and that you understand your donors, and that you do the work and the homework, right? So if you are looking at potential donors and you know they've been longtime givers and they're giving X amount, then you want to take the time to go through each of those donors. And this is like the very big brother part of fundraising, right? But you're going to Google them and you're maybe going to buy a wealth assessment program and you're going to see who they've donated to and if they have a family foundation. And if they do, you're going to look at that 990 and get even more information about their giving. You're going to talk to your board and your capital campaign committee and find out who they know on your donor list and what they know about their giving. And then once you've collected all of that research, then you're going to look at each individual case and you're going to say, you know, based on this research, they've been giving us, you know, $500 a year for 10 years. I bet they could give a one-time gift of $15,000 or $50,000 because we've seen that they've given to these other groups. We know this about them. We know they just had a major life change. They sold a business and they've now come into money. Like, we know these things about them because any of those factors could change what their capacity is. So those are the things that we look at when we try to determine, and I know, Casey, you know these things, but these are the things that we look at when we try to determine moving someone up that ladder or asking for a special, meaningful one-time gift.
Yeah, because I know sometimes with plan giving, we look at their, you know, this is their lifetime legacy gift. And so it's like their final gift. And if we're asking, but a capital campaign is a bit different because it might not be their last and final gift to you.
Exactly. That's so true.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda, what do you think about debt retirement campaigns do you consider that a kind of capital campaign, or is it done a little bit differently?
I would consider it a capital campaign, and I would consider it a real tough capital campaign. I think that's some of the hardest dollars to try to raise. And I would look to my longtime supporters and the people who are most engaged in my organization who would care the most about our long-term sustainability and would know us the best. And I would do a capital campaign probably in that case fairly quietly, depending on, you know, different factors.
All right. Well, I don't think, oh, Amy, go ahead. Oh, you're still on mute. You're still on mute, Amy.
Thank you kindly. So we're obviously in this new space of a digital world and post-COVID. Any new development insights within the capital campaign space that you're like, gosh, you know, people need to pivot to this? Any tried and true digital examples?
Yeah, very, very good question. I mean, sure, you all are fundraisers, so you know probably even better than I do. Fundraising the last couple of years has been tricky. Although people are giving more than they've ever given in the past. I mean, giving has been up because thank goodness the stock market held out. And people also saw the need, right? That there was a greater need, and they had extra funds that they could help with. The thing that's been, I think, the most tricky during COVID has been introducing new potential major donors to a capital campaign or an organization. Because so often your capital campaign committee, the best way for them to connect with people about your project is, you know, if they know they're going to be at a dinner party with so-and-so. And so when they ask what they've been up to, they're going to mention your organization and gauge their reaction. When they're at such and such committee meeting for some other business or organization, they know they always sit next to so-and-so, and they're going to mention this project and just kind of gauge their interest level. Those natural connections are often the best way to do what we call our warm-up conversations for major gifts for capital campaign. Not having those the last couple of years has been tough. But the good news is that at least in the clients that I've worked with, we've been able to do Zoom and online one-on-one meetings more easily too. So you just kind of have to just know that in this COVID world, there's still, I'm not surprised, but there's still many people who feel uncomfortable with getting together in person. And so we just have to have then virtual meetings and introductions. And that's just kind of the way it is, right? And what has worked really well that I've seen with my clients is having PowerPoints instead of the hard copy case statement, and making sure we have some really good engaging visuals to share, and making sure that they see our video, our promotional video. So I'd say that's one of the things is we have to do the virtual meetings. There's been no way around it. I'd say one thing that's actually worked really well is virtual meetings to keep new donors engaged. So doing like virtual meetings with a group of special donors and saying, hey, we've made some amazing progress. We want you to be the first to know. Join us for a Zoom at such a time and date. And we can't wait to share this with you. Donors have been showing up for those because it's convenient and it's a way to connect.
Can I ask one thing? I don't want to put any negativity in here, but and it's early in it, but with inflation raising its ugly head, are you seeing the capital campaigns you're working on? Are you seeing that impact that yet?
Good question. Not yet. I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen. And just like everything in the COVID world, taking it day by day. I think people are starting to feel the pinch, but not from what I've seen in major giving quite yet. But we don't know what's going to happen. So if you're planning a campaign later this year or 2023, it's definitely something to just, you know, obviously be aware of and keep an eye on. And that's one of those things where you might have to do a pivot.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like, well, there's a wealth factor that I think people will have to consider for sure. We have one other question here, newbie question. Where do you find the different foundations that support or give seed money to kick off your nonprofit fundraising? You've already mentioned Madison Community Foundation. What other names, Amanda, can you offer, or resources can you point somebody to find the names of local foundations to potentially ask for seed money?
Yeah, so for that in specifically, I think that it's all about your relationship with those foundations. So there isn't necessarily another foundation that I would say has a program for pre-development dollars or really kind of specializes in that. But if you have a good relationship with the board or the leads of those foundations, they might consider it money well spent. So, you know, you just think about, so the most important thing you can do is start getting a list of those foundations and then getting the list of the board that is on those foundations. And you can find that on their websites or on their 990 forms. And then sharing those lists with your board members and finding out who they know so that they can reach out for you and start developing those relationships. Because even in foundation fundraising, it's all about relationships and having them know you because they get so many asks. In terms of like, where do you go to get a list of foundations? I mean, I would look at like GuideStar or like the grant foundation grant directory. You used to be able to go to the UW Memorial Library to look that up. But now you can actually get a pretty cheap subscription on your own for that. I think it's like $15 a month or something. And that's a really easy way to find foundations. And then you can also just Google and there's foundations that will come up. But I would definitely recommend the online foundation directory.
Thanks again, Amanda, for making time this morning. I think this was very informative, a lot of good insights offered. I would echo everything that you said.
Mm-hmm.
I've been sitting on a nonprofit foundation board that's trying to do a capital campaign with volunteers and fits and starts and whatever. And there's just so many things that you said about being organized. The leadership team is going to be the key to your success, and having 75% secured beforehand. All of those things like didn't happen in this one situation that I'm in. And, you know, it's been frustrating for everybody, and it really makes it challenging to cap it off at the end. But so heed Amanda's advice, try and find her, get on her schedule if you can, if you want to further some of these conversations.